And welcome back to the Webster Red Door podcast. I'm Maggie Sanchez, the host of this lovely podcast, and I'm so excited to be sitting down again interviewing these amazing people for another semester. And today I'm sitting down with someone who's not just a professor here at Webster. Her book, The Archive, is all in the present tense, won the Barrow Street Book Prize in 2021. Her creative nonfiction has appeared in places such as the North American Review and Story Quarterly, with her writing about art, books, and pop culture appearing in Bitch Paper, the Arts newspaper, and the Washington Post. She is also the winner of the Lambda Literary Award and the recipient of the Pat Holt Prize for Critical Arts Writing. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Elizabeth Hoover. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello, Maggie. Thanks for having me.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. What inspired you to write a collection of poems that infuses the structure of a library catalog card? And what does that structure mean to you?
Yeah. So growing up, I spent a lot of time in the library, and the library felt like a very magical place for me. My neighborhood library had this big turret, so it looked like a beautiful castle. So it felt very fantastical. And at the time, you used the library card catalog. And that meant that there were these drawers you would pull out that were crammed with index cards that would tell you the location of the book and the subjects within. And so it made reading and research feel very embodied as you ran your hands down these packed together cards. And what I liked about using the card catalog was that it was incessantly pointing you to something else. And so you'd look up a subject, it would have the title of the book, and then it would have see also this book, see also that book, see also this subject. And so just in this tiny little card, these networks and relationships of thinking and intellectual activity were just, I could hold them in my little hand.
I love that. So what does the archive mean to you?
Wow, that's a really big question. The word archive can mean different things in different contexts. So the archives are at once physical places that are repositories of information and also repositories of mystery and blanks and gaps and pieces of paper you don't really know where they came from or why they're there. But archives are really everywhere. People might have an Instagram account that they look back through at their travel photos. So an archive is really any collection of materials that has been collected in an intentional way. And for me, I became really interested in archives because my first mentor, Michael Harper at Brown University, was very interested in the way that poetry could tell history in alternative ways. And he would send me to this archive called the John Hay Library on Brown's campus. And it was there that I discovered that archives don't just house papers, but oftentimes they house objects. And these objects are called realia. So, for example, Indiana University has the Sylvia Plath collection, which contains Sylvia Plath's hair that her mother kept. And I remember in Brown, they had an art book collection, and there was a book in the shape of a fish made out of wood. So archives and museums started to really bleed together for me.
I like that. I was reading the acknowledgments in the back of your book, and your sister is one of them. And she did the artwork for your book.
She did, yeah.
Do you know what inspired her to do that?
I asked her.
Because it's very mismatched photos of there's I think a house or a camera on there.
Yeah, those are all objects from the poems in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does in many ways encapsulate the archive because of the way materials are stored. You know, sometimes you'll have all of the material related to a certain performance, and so they have a kind of cohesion. But sometimes the materials are stored chronologically. So you'll have someone's, letter from their publisher next to a Christmas card that they kept from their daughter. So there's idea of mismatched objects. And then as the researcher, you get to navigate between what makes them disparate to try to pull them together.
I just really love that. Can you break down, what does your editing stage look like? How was it trying to edit your book? And like, how long does it take you to decide when a piece of writing is good enough to send to a publisher?
So editing is not my favorite stage. I love being in revision. So when you're in revision, you've generated all this material and anything could happen. So I'm a poet, but I also write creative nonfiction. And so, I have this language and I don't know if it's going to coalesce into a poem or it might become an essay. It creates such unexpected and joyful occurrences. My second book, which isn't out yet, focuses on trauma. And so I have all this leftover material about specifically childhood trauma. But in the revision process, I find that I'm actually writing about community and joy and caretaking. And so revision feels not only transformational to the text, but transformational to me as a writer. When I'm editing and I'm like, it's not to say that a change of one word can't change an entire text or really transform a text. But when I'm in the editing phase, I know things are getting locked down. They're getting ready to be sent to someone else. They're getting fixed. And it starts to get kind of still. And so I really do like to be in the mess of revision. Now, the second question, it's not that I decide that something's good enough for me to send it out, but it's that I've decided I'm done with it. And me being done with something is different than it being done. When I just can't deal anymore with a text. So like sometimes I'll write a poem and I'll be reading aloud, and I'm like, this sounds great. Like I don't want to change anything. I write the date on it and then I put it away and I come back to it a month later and read it. And then usually at that point I was like, what was I thinking? This is terrible. But when I get to a point where I'm like, I just don't want to work on this anymore. I think I've taken it as far as I can go. I might send it out to see what the response is. And then sometimes it gets picked up, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't get picked up, I'll either abandon it or return to it at some later date.
Yeah, I hate the revision process because it's like going back to your diary in a way. And so like going back to where you were and when you were in that mindset when you first wrote it, it's kind of like a weird dichotomy. If I want to go back to that mindset, to me just was impossible. Like I could not do it. Like it would clearly look kind of like two separate entities that I was trying to shove into one. And then when I actually went to go see Allegra Hyde speak, she said something beautiful. Like she viewed these characters as like someone that she wants to keep to getting to know. And so when I was in your class, take her nonfiction class. Like,
Thank you.
I had to sit with these feelings of it is very, very healing in a way to kind of like go back to it and not be afraid of the words that are on the page to me.
Yeah. And I think this comes down to the idea of intention. Like when you said like go back into the original mindset, for me what's exciting is that I'm no longer in the original mindset. And I'm like, ooh, what are you? Like, where'd you come from? Well, what are we going to do with you?
So do you remember the first piece of writing you tried to get published?
Yeah. So there was a children's magazine called Cricket Magazine, and they would publish poems in the back. And I sent in my little poem. It was in 8th grade, I remember, because we had a poet in the school. I remember her name was Valerie Lawrence. And so I went home and I typed up my poems. And I remember the first poem I remember writing was actually about the race riots in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, following the Rodney King beating. And I think that maybe was the poem that got published in Cricket. Yeah.
Oh, wow. You had mentioned in an interview with Bomb Magazine a quote by Samuel Beckett, "Try again, fail better." What does this quote mean to you as a writer? And do you have any advice for those writers wanting to get published one day?
Those are two very different questions.
Yeah.
Because I think, that's a very famous Beckett quote. And it's often like on the walls of creative writing professors' offices, And I remember seeing it so many times. And I was teaching a class called Introduction to Irish Literature. In the Samuel Beckett week, I decided to interview a Beckett scholar and interview him. And that quote came up. And I think what I came to realize is that Beckett was interested in what options become available to you when you're not interested in success. Like, if the goal is not to succeed, so many more possibilities are present. So the archive is all in present tense. I wrote it very fast. It was never workshopped. And I actually love it. I know you're not supposed to say this, but I love my book.
I feel like you should love the thing that you write.
I was at the Webster film series this weekend, and they were showing this film called Angel 69, and it was a speculative documentary about queer life in Colombia. And sometimes I go to movies and I'm like, wow, that was a really beautiful movie, or wow, I really love that movie. But every once in a while I see a movie where it just reminds me that I'm an artist. It reminds me that I should be making art, that I should be taking risks, that I should be making work out of my deep love for my community. Publication be damned, success be damned. That's why I'm here. For me, the advice for getting published feels really different than the advice about being a great writer or taking risks. When it comes to publishing, you're going to hear the same thing. Read the publication, make sure you read the guidelines. Don't get too caught up in finding something that matches perfectly. The first thing is know why you want to get published, because that will determine your method of getting published. So I think magazines are the baby steps. And then if you're a fiction writer, there are particular literary journals that agents read. The bad news is there's no secret. There is no secret guaranteed success method to getting published. If there was, I would 100% tell you. But it's also sending a lot of stuff out. Can I make a plug?
Yes.
One thing I'd like to plug is that the genderqueer Frankenstein class that I'm teaching is collaborating with the Webster film series. So we're going to have a series of Frankenstein-related films shown in the Winifred Moore auditoriums on Mondays at 7 p.m. that'll be introduced by students in that class. So some of the films we're going to be showing include The Bride of Frankenstein, Candyman, and I'm very excited for a screening of Birth, Rebirth by director and screenwriter Laura Moss, who's also going to do a campus visit. So if you're interested in this, please follow the Webster film series, and you can find us on the university events calendar. My book is available at Left Bank Books and Subterranean Books. It's also available through my publisher's website. That's Barrow Street Press. And I have a website. It's eHoover Inc. So EHOOVERINK.com. Thanks so much for having me, Maggie.
Anytime, please.
It's been a delight.
Before we end the episode, the incredible chair and now repeat offender to the podcast, Carla Armbruster, she's back at it. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me. As you know, we are back in school, and so things are a little busier, still good.
Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so first I want to welcome all of our new students. We actually have quite a few new English majors and creative writing majors, all of whom I hope are taking one or the other sections of English 1900 Introductory Seminar and Literary Analysis. So we have some events going on that I want to make sure everybody knows about. We are going to have an event really more for the new students on navigating the English and creative writing majors on Tuesday, September 10th at 3 o'clock. Probably in Pearson 2, there will be flyers, and it'll be on our social media. So if you are not following the English department on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, you can do that. And the handle for all three is at English at WebU, ENGLISHATWEBU. And then we are going to have a student reading night featuring some of our own creative writing students, maybe some literature students too. I'm not exactly sure who's reading Tuesday, October 1st at 7 p.m., also in Pearson Room 2. So that is always a really fun event to come to and support your fellow students and bring friends and family to. We're going to have our David Clue series visiting writer, fiction writer Mary Troy on November 14th. She'll read at 1:30 p.m. I don't know where yet. Once again, kind of keep posted. And the other big news that everyone really needs to pay attention to is registration for spring is going to be early. The university is replacing its student record system. And so all of that registration for classes has to happen between, let's see, September 30th, which is when registration opens for seniors. And I think the date by when all the systems go dark, as they're putting it, is like October 20 something. I think you will be able to register or get and make changes again right before spring starts. The registration is starting early. And that if you want to get in those classes that fill up, you definitely need to do it during the registration period, which is going to start on September 30th. So obviously advising is going to have to start early too. We're going to have some exciting new classes. Actually, maybe I'll mention a couple of them. Elizabeth is going to teach a seminar and a major author on Adrienne Rich. So that's going to be really, really special. And then I decided to teach a class on Native American literature because our cool speaker series reader is going to be Deborah Tuffa, who is a graduate of our program and just had a really well-received memoir come out, and Deborah is Native American. And so I'm going to teach this class and include her book in it, just so that we're kind of making the most of her being on campus.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and Literary London. Sheila is going to be taking a group of students over spring break to London. The class will meet all semester, but it will include that spring break trip. So
exciting.
lots of cool stuff. Anne's going to do myth and classical literature. So, yeah. So I just want to once again welcome everybody back. And even though you are just getting started with this semester, in a little while, we're going to ask you to start thinking about next semester. So
Welcome to Webster.
yeah, welcome to Webster. We plan ahead. All right, thanks, Maggie.
Thank you so much for being here, Carly. I appreciate you so much.
You're welcome. You're doing such a good job with this. Thanks.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at English at Webster to stay up to date with everything in the English department. And until next time, bye.